There's 5 movies left over from 2020 that I have not gotten to review yet for the channel. So before we do the 2020 wrap up, now that Oscar season is over and all of this, I wanted to review these 5 films for you. Some of them Oscar nominated themselves. Another Round, Love and Monsters, Pinocchio, First Cow, and Malcolm and Marie. Let's talk about them. Hey guys, Dan here. This is Dan Reviews It, and welcome to my multi-review here for 5 movies from 2020. Pretty much some of the last ones that I watched before the Oscars came on. 3 of them were Oscar nominated. 2 of them were just movies that had appeared on a lot of year-end lists or had some sort of awards buzz that I thought, well, maybe it could get an Oscar nomination, but they didn't. That's First Cow and Malcolm and Marie. But the other 3, we're going to start there. Before we get to all of this, I do want to say these will be spoiler-free reviews, and I'm going to try and bust through them pretty quickly. These aren't going to be my typical, 8 to 10-minute reviews for each movie. I think 3 to 4 minutes should suffice. These are movies that have been out a few months. I don't think there's a lot of buzz on them these days, but I did want to just sort of complete the set of 2020 movies that I had reviewed for the channel. So let's start with Another Round, because that had... Actually, it did win at the Oscars. It won Best International Feature, but it was also nominated for Best Director, which it did not win, of course. That went to Chloe Zhao. But this one is interesting because I didn't really watch a lot of the foreign films this year. I tried to get in as many movies as I could. I tried to hit the 200 mark. I didn't make it there. I fell a little bit short. I saw 193 movies for 2020. But this one is one of 2 that I did see for the international category because they were both up in other categories. Collective was up for Best Doc, and this one was up for Best Director as well. So I did check it out. And Mads Mikkelsen is the star of this, who I'm currently watching in Hannibal as well, so I can review those shows for you guys on the channel. But this film is not in English. It's in Danish. And it basically takes these 4 high school teachers who are in their 40s, early 40s. One, in fact, turns 40 at the beginning of the movie. And they decide, from this study that they had heard about, they decide to consume alcohol on a daily basis, just a little bit at a time, to see how it affects their lives, both professionally and socially. And in some instances, it could work out. And in other instances, it maybe is not such a good thing for 1 or maybe 2 of the guys. This is a really, really interesting story. I had never heard of anything like this. I mean, I obviously know about, day drinking and functional alcoholism and all of that, but to actually sort of, they go through the breathalyzer test every day to sort of measure where they are. It's something like, as long as they were below a 0.05 or something like that, then that's enough. So basically, it's enough to get a little buzz on. But their lives before this experiment were so very boring and run of the mill, and so they decided, well, let's spice it up with this. And I think it's a very interesting character study for sure. And I think it really sort of touches on the results of basically alcoholism. Like, these guys all sort of start out, pretty nonchalant, like, okay, let's just do a little bit. And then, of course, the little gets more and more. And eventually, they have to come to some sort of decision of like, okay, what are we doing here? Is this healthy? Is this not? Can we stop doing this if we want to? That kind of thing. And so it explores different aspects because no one of these 4 guys has the same experience. None of the alcohol, affects them in the same way. And I thought that was a bold choice too, because it gave us 4 different avenues of like, okay, well, here's what alcohol can do. And like I said, in some instances, it actually enhanced the person's life and becomes sort of, a nice little sort of kickback, for the day. The performances here are great. I was not familiar with the other guys on the scene. Mads Mikkelsen, of course, I know from several things, but Thomas Bo Larsen, Lars Ranthe, and Mangus Milang. I don't know any of them, but they all did, decent jobs, and they all played well off each other. You could feel that, these characters did know each other for several years, and had this nice camaraderie together. You could feel it. So overall, I thought this was an enjoyable movie. I think it might be a little bit of a hard watch for somebody who either is a recovering alcoholic or has had somebody in their family that has dealt with a lot of heavy alcohol struggles, because it does sort of play a little bit lightly with some of that stuff. But of course, look, we see drunks in movies having a great time constantly, so that's nothing new either. But I think it might be, a little bit triggering in that way, but I really enjoyed this movie. I give another round an A minus. Up next, we're going to talk about Love and Monsters. This was nominated at the awards for Best Visual Effects, and you could see why. It's got a lot of really, really cool monster designs, world building. Dylan O'Brien is the star of this, who you may know from the Maze Runner franchise. You may also know from Teen Wolf on MTV, that series. O'Brien's sort of one of these guys who, like, I always sensed maybe there was a good actor in there, but I don't really care for the Maze Runner movies. I didn't watch Teen Wolf, and I think I've seen him in, like, maybe one or two other things, and it's just like, he's okay, but, like, is there a good actor in there somewhere, or is he just getting lucky with these roles because he's attractive? And this movie sort of answers that question, because I think he's very good here. This takes place after this apocalypse of monsters. About 7 years later, we see the main character, Joel, played by O'Brien, who is sitting under, living underground ever since these big, huge monsters took over the rest of the world. And so he reconnects over the radio with his high school girlfriend, Amy, played by Jessica Herwick, and decides to go find her 80 miles away at this colony. And along the way, he meets a lot of crazy monsters, and he meets some people, too, that help him along the journey, including one played by Michael Rooker, who is always welcome. This movie was going to be released in theaters in February of this year, but they decided, let's just say, forget it. Paramount was like, movie theaters aren't really going to be ready in February yet, so let's just, release it in October. And, I think it was a wise move. They released it at a time when really nothing was coming out, even on demand. Not a lot of things were sort of getting released, so they did that. They put it in theaters that were open at the time. And I think in a different year, this movie probably wouldn't have been up for Best Visual Effects, because we didn't have any Marvel movies this year, and, all of this kind of thing. The big budget pictures. There was no Jurassic Park movie this year. So this one sort of got in under the radar, I think, at a good time. One other thing I really liked about it, other than the awesome designs of the creatures, is that they employed a real dog to be a part of this movie. He meets a dog shortly into his journey called Boy, and he's played by this real dog named Hero. And I was so glad, after that abomination of CGI dog in The Call of the Wild with Harrison Ford last year, I was very happy to see a real dog. And it would have been easy for them to create a dog, I suppose, seeing as how they created all these wild monsters. But I'm glad they decided, let's put our CGI budget into the monsters, because that's where it really shines. But the thing that caught me about this movie that I didn't expect is how heartfelt it is. It could have been this sort of sappy young adult love story. And I'm not sure actually if it's based on a YA novel or if it's an original story. I did not look that up. But either way, like, it could have fallen into a lot of those traps, and it doesn't do that. Yeah, I mean, there's a few there. Obviously, the romance is sort of a key angle in this movie, but the movie has a lot more heart than I would have originally anticipated. And I think I put off watching it for so long because it didn't seem like it would interest me. Dylan O'Brien, I'm on the fence about, but then it got nominated, and I was like, all right, well, I guess I got to watch it now. And I'm very glad I did. So thank you, Academy, for showing me this movie, because I don't think I would have watched it otherwise, to be completely honest. So overall, I thought this was a very good movie. Couple of YA, classic tropes at play that they don't really do much with, but I think in other ways this movie definitely redeemed those qualities. So I leave Love and Monsters with a B+. Up next, we're going to talk about Pinocchio, and this is not the version that's coming out. They're always doing different versions of these movies. There's a new Pinocchio coming out in 2021, I believe, unless it's been pushed back, by Guillermo del Toro, and of course, it's going to be the same story. But this version was actually filmed in 2019 and not released till Christmas of this past year, and it was nominated at the Oscars for, I believe, two things. I think not visual effects, right? Costume design and makeup and hairstyling were the two. It actually could have been, I think, nominated maybe for visual effects too, because there is a lot of practical effects here. But I guess that falls more under the makeup category than anything. So I guess it makes sense that maybe it's not so special effects with like CGI and stuff. I guess the makeup does make sense here. It did not win the award. I forget, maybe Mank won that. But either way, this is Roberto Benigni, who already did a Pinocchio movie like 20 years ago. It's so odd that he's like back doing a different one. But he's Geppetto here. And this newcomer kid, Federico Elipi or Alapi, plays Pinocchio. And this is another one that's not in English. This is in Italian the whole time. And it's really a cool movie. I mean, it goes very closely to the original source material, which, if you know anything about these old fairy tales from back in the day, they are really creepy. Like Disney, yeah, there's some creepy stuff when Disney made the animated versions, but like for the most part, it's still like, okay, let's sing a song and let's, joke around and, oh, look, there's Jiminy Cricket. He's cute. This goes more to the source material and has some really scary stuff as a result. In fact, this is rated PG-13. This is not for children. One of my big actually complaints about it is just calling it Pinocchio, because Disney, releases so many live action re-releases of their animated classics these days. I think they should have titled it something. I mean, they could have had Pinocchio in the title, but like whoever wrote the original book or something, I forget the guy's name. It's not Grimm. It wasn't a Grimm book. Collodi or something. If you called it Collodi's Pinocchio, I don't know. I think it's a little bit of a ruse that if people weren't paying much attention, especially like parents looking for stuff for their kids to watch on demand. Oh, look, there's a new live action Pinocchio. Must be from Disney. Kids are going to be freaked out to hell by this movie. It's very frightening, some disturbing images for sure. The makeup is fantastic. There's no doubt about that. And this little boy is really good. He's adorable, and even though he's got his face caked with different makeup, and they could have done more with the elongated nose. They only did that a couple of times in the film, which was a bit of a bummer. But he's trying to act and emote with all of this makeup and prosthetics, and he did a really good job. I don't know if he is a famous child actor in Italy. Maybe he is. I don't know. But what's interesting is this same kid also dubbed himself over in the English version. So he's obviously bilingual. So if you watch with the English subtitles, he's still the one doing the voice, which I think is cool. There's not too much to say about the story because you know the story. They do a lot of the really famous stuff, both from the Disney version and from other versions maybe you've seen over the years. I imagine Del Toro's version will probably dive into the same. So we'll probably be reviewing this movie again in the next 12 or 15 months or so, whenever that gets finished. But Roberto Benigni, he was okay here. They didn't really do a ton with the Geppetto character. But, they don't in the Disney version either. He's pretty stock. But he's there, and he's a part of the journey in various stages. But look, the best part about this is the makeup and the production design and all of these things, the art direction. All of that stuff is great. The little kid is a good actor. But I just, other than like film aficionados or people like myself who are reviewing Oscar-nominated movies, I'm not exactly sure who this audience is for this movie. Like, it's certainly not kids. It's certainly not families. But it's not gory enough to go into that teen horror kind of category. It's just very disturbing. But it never reaches really those horror levels. So that's one of my other issues is I'm not sure who this movie is for specifically, but I think it was very well done. I think people that don't know what to expect will probably hate it. But I think if you know, okay, this is not a remake of the Disney version. This is not going to be Happy Go Lucky. This is not going to be singing When You Wish Upon a Star. Then I think you can sort of dive into it from that way and enjoy it more. So I leave Pinocchio with a B. Next, we have First Cow. The last two, like I said, were not nominated for Oscars, but I thought this one could have been nominated for something. It appeared on dozens of year-end best-of lists, and it was a big part of a lot of different film critic awards and all of that. And it won a few. I mean, New York Film Critics Award, it won Best Picture of the Year. So, I thought maybe, and I know my buddy Peter, who's been on my channel a couple of times, but we love to talk movies. This was his number one, I believe, of 2020. So I had to check it out for myself, and I can't say that I'm quite that high up on it, but I did think it was interesting. So this takes place in the 1820s, and it features two travelers who meet themselves, or meet each other, I should say, and they are on the run from hunters. And they both want to kind of strike it rich, but don't really know how. And one of them is a really good baker, so they sort of secretly steal some milk from this prized dairy cow down the lane, and make these biscuits that are apparently like the best biscuits of all time. They're super, super good and all of that. And so they get themselves a little business selling these biscuits. And it's John Magaro and Orion Lee that are the stars of this film. Not really familiar with either. But it's directed by Kelly Reichardt, who I have heard of before, but I don't think I know any of their movies. Let's see. Certain Women, I don't know. Night Moves, I don't know. Yeah, so Wendy and Lucy I've heard of. That's obviously a very film circle kind of like, oh, Wendy and Lucy, very hip indie movie, but I never saw it, so it doesn't tell me anything either. So this is maybe the first thing I've ever seen her do. And it does take a little bit of time to get into the story. It is one of these that's slow moving. And, it's something I talk about a lot on my channel. Oh, this thing was so slow. I don't mind a slow build. I really don't, if the movie itself isn't over 2 hours. This one is. It's a little bit, it's like 2 hours and 2 minutes, which, okay. But when you could trim it down to 1 hour and 40 and not miss anything of the story, I don't mind that either. I kind of prefer it. I get it. They were setting up the motif, and they were setting up the whole business and setting up the camaraderie between these two people, and it's fine. I got it. But I think they could have fast-tracked some of that and gotten to the meat and potatoes a little bit quicker. My other real big complaint with it is that it was shot very darkly. It is one of the most horribly lit movies I've ever seen. And I understand they're in the 1820s. There's not a lot of, obviously, natural light in a nighttime scene. It's either light by a lantern or something like that, fireplace or fire pit. But they didn't have electricity, so I get that, but I think there's ways to light a scene better than this. Now, I'll admit, I don't have the greatest TV, so when I watched this, it was probably harder for me to make out what was going on in these dark scenes than somebody with, really nice high definition or something like that. So, okay, I admit that. But, yeah, it really kind of threw me, because in some scenes, I honestly didn't know what was happening. But the performances are good. This movie reminded me a lot of The Lighthouse from a couple of years ago. Just sort of, not necessarily with the plot or anything, but just in the look of the movie, the feel of the movie. And that one was in black and white. I just got those sort of vibes from it. I liked that movie maybe a little bit more, but I thought this was an interesting story. I like these two characters a lot, and their sort of quest for riches, I think, is something we can all relate to, and certainly back in that era, the gold panning era. So I can't agree quite with my buddy that this is the number one movie of the year. I can't agree with the New York Critics, Film Awards, but I do like this movie, and it's a B+ from me. I mean, I think one thing is all of these movies are pretty much going to be positives because, I sort of sought them out after the Oscar nominations. So you have to figure it's either something I wanted to see or something that was Oscar nominated. So they're going to be pretty high. And the final movie is no exception. This is a positive one as well. Malcolm and Marie is the film. And again, no Oscar love here, but Zendaya had gotten a few notices from different groups. Hollywood Critics Association nominated her for Best Actress. Critics' Choice Movie Awards nominated her for Best Actress. She's nominated for MTV Movie Award coming up. And so this movie is only of two people, Zendaya and John David Washington, who, was in Tenet and Black Klansman. He's Denzel's son. And this is, by all metrics, the first film that was written, directed, and produced after COVID, which explains why actually it's just these two people in the movie. In fact, it was filmed in secret. It wasn't even a concept until COVID. But in June and July, they filmed this movie, financed it, produced it, and just with these two actors. And the premise is basically the John David Washington character, Malcolm. He comes home from this, huge premiere. He's a movie writer, director, and his girlfriend is with him, Zendaya, Marie, of course, from the title. And the whole movie is basically them sort of kind of arguing, back and forth, but more to the point of arguing. It's conversation piece. It's two people talking about some pretty heated topics. Yes, there's some fights in there. There's some definite harsh words. There's some screaming, but there's also some tenderness. There's also some love. And it's all about, his ego and, this critic didn't like me and whatever. And she's trying to boost his ego. And he's like, well, what do you know? Da, 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 da. And that sort of sparks everything. Personally, I don't mind when there's a movie where there's nothing but fighting. I like the movie The Breakup, Jennifer Aniston and Vince Vaughn. A lot of people hate that movie. I find it to be pretty real, in the grander scheme. And I found this movie to be very real as well. I think this is an amazing performance from Zendaya. It really is. I think after Greatest Showman, I was like, all right, Zendaya is really going to be one of these actresses to watch over the next decade or so. John David Washington, I'm a little bit back and forth with. I think he was great in Black Klansman, but again, he was outshined by Adam Driver and some others there. I thought he was okay in Tenet, but again, outshined by Robert Pattinson. And here, it's Zendaya that sort of takes center stage. So I don't know. I think John David Washington is sort of in his father's shadow a little bit, obviously. But if he can sort of make his own sort of persona and his own acting choices, I think that will serve him well. He's fine here, but I think Zendaya sort of definitely deserves her accolades, over the no accolades that he got for this movie. But my only real complaint, other than that, she outshines him, is that it gets a little repetitive. It's about 105 minutes, and how much can we really have arguments with these people? Now, I've been in 105-minute arguments before, so I do get it. I mean, again, it is kind of believable in that regard. I've certainly been in those conversations, but at the end of the day, do you want to sit there and watch it for that long? I'm not sure. The Breakup at least had comedy, in the mix as well. Jason Bateman was there, and there's some funny lines. Here, this is all very dramatic. But look, I applaud what they did here with the post-COVID stuff. I reviewed on my TV News and Reviews a few different shows that had come up, scripted shows in the COVID era. Love in the Time of COVID was one of them I think that was Freeform. And that was well done. It was interesting. But I think this movie works regardless. Like from a non-COVID standpoint, it still works. You could see this movie in 10 years and it's going to have a more, timeless nature, because it's not like they're mentioning COVID at all. Obviously, he just came from a movie premiere. So I think in the grand scheme of this movie, there is no COVID. It doesn't really exist. And I thought that was a good choice. I thought that was smart. So overall, I thought this was another good one, and I leave it with a B. So the lowest grade of all these, I mean, these are all between A- and B. These are all good movies. I recommend them. But that's it now. I've reviewed every movie, I think, that I've seen for 2020. So in the next week or two, I'm going to compile my best of the year list. I'm going to have for you my best movies of the year, my worst movies of the year, and some in-betweeners as well. So thank you for watching, and we'll see you back here next time. Bye.